What is truth, and how do we find truth in a world of deception? Are there biblical truths about our world and our lives that we can trust? And who are the key players in the end times? What does the Bible say about the Middle East, Iran, China, and Russia? And is there proof for what Scripture says? What do recent archaeological exploration tell us about the Bible? Who were the Anunnaki? What are angels, demons, and the Nephilims? Will the Nephilims return? Are there interdimensional beings, and how do they relate to the Bible? Stick around as we dive into Scripture for more answers in this episode of Mission Truth.
Welcome, everyone, to another exciting episode where we dive into the statement of truth and we try to prove that we're right.
Yeah. No, that I'm right.
Oh, right. That
Just
Nick's
me.
right.
Just me.
Not me. Just
Yeah,
Nick.
just me.
By the way,
Yeah.
this is Nick. I'm Trevor. This is Mission Truth, where we make statements and we try to prove those statements true or false based on our truth scale. I don't go over our truth scale very often. I'm going to try to touch on it today just real quick. We have a 5-point truth scale, and I should have it memorized by now, but I don't.
So
The
proven,
Go ahead.
first one.
Yes.
And then the second one is
Plausible.
plausible. Then we missed one, probable.
Probable. Sorry.
And then plausible.
Then plausible.
Then plausible deniability.
Right.
And then
preposterous.
Yeah.
Now, I think the lowest we've ever gotten on the truth scale so far is a 3.
For me,
Or
yeah.
4.
We haven't talked about some of the more
Yeah.
outlandish things that maybe we'll touch on
But
down
we,
the road. But
after we go through our episode, we kind of settle on what our score is for that truth scale.
Well, we've had sort of a focus, I think, for a lot of the stuff that we've been doing. We've been trying to set up the early Genesis accounts and stuff. We haven't gone deep into like current events and things and some of the things that are out there.
Yeah.
We'll see some of those probably
I'm sure
a little lower on the truth scale.
there's plenty
But-
of preposterous
but
things out there that
Yeah.
I'm sure we're going to get into. But on today's episode, we've been kind of going over, of course, what Nick said going into Genesis. And we were discussing the seed wars. And now we have gotten to the flood part of the Bible.
Yep.
But the statement that we're actually kind of discussed today is there is evidence for a catastrophic worldwide flood.
Yep.
And that's kind of what we're going to discuss at the end of throughout the episode, but we'll go on the truth meter at the end of the episode.
Yep.
So basically, we're just kind of lay a groundwork here in that there are many different stories around the world. You have Chinese tales, you have the Epic of Gilgamesh, you have the biblical account. You have
Native American accounts.
Native American accounts. You have all these different stories of a flood story. It seems to be in every corner of the world. So you would think that, there was probably a flood, but there is argument as to whether it was local floods that these people were discussing, not exactly a catastrophic flood, because there's no timetables given to these flood accounts. There's nothing linking them together.
There's also some physical issues that you have to deal with a global flood. Is the fact that the highest mountain on the earth is 36,000 feet.
It is now.
Well, that gets into the. But the point being is this is why a lot of scientists are skeptical about the idea of a worldwide flood.
You're correct.
It's because just of the sheer amount of water it would take to cover 36,000 feet of Earth's surface.
And you have to take into a lot of assumptions. People, this is one thing that you run into with a lot of people when they look at history or look at things in the past, especially prehistoric, because this would be considered prehistoric. They think the world looked like it does now, like it's the same. It hasn't really changed.
Well, see, science to some degree necessitates that. We've talked about it before, this idea of uniformitarianism, where all processes have continued as we currently see them throughout time. And they have to assume that, because that's the only way you can really logically make predictions about the past, is if you kind of assume that things.
Correct.
And so catastrophic events like a global flood really sort of throw a monkey wrench in science's ability to really say anything about the distant past. So
we're going to talk about those different evidences, I guess you could say, of a possible global catastrophic worldwide
Catastrophic,
flood. You could really get in trouble if you mispronounced catastrophic. Nick, what are some of those evidences that we have for?
Well,
for
we didn't really
possible...
talk about the difference between a worldwide versus a localized flood and some of the theories that are kind of associated with that. So
right. So of course, in a localized flood, you're just going to have damage in a specific region. It's not going to flood any surrounding areas. It's always going to be located directly in that area. There's the theory of the Black Sea flood, where they said at one point in time that the water reversed. There actually used to be water flowing from the Black Sea into the Mediterranean, and somehow it reversed back into the Black Sea. And they said that was a localized event that raised the water level and covered all of the islands in the surrounding areas. They have evidence of that, apparently. Whether it was a localized flood. The thing is that there's just because there's a localized flood doesn't mean there wasn't a bigger event.
Yeah, it doesn't mean that refers to the flood. There's also some people have hypothesized a flooding of the Euphrates and Tigris rivers.
Right.
Like a significant flooding that would have, at least in Mesopotamia, more or less looked like an entire flooding of the world.
And of course,
that doesn't explain other cultures having these. But
in Japan, you see the tsunamis. You know, the effect of the tsunamis, and people say that that's a localized flooding event caused by an earthquake or a volcanic event. But again, that's a localized flood. So, and that kind of makes it difficult for us to imagine a global catastrophe and what that would look like. And so that's kind of what's the word that's used in politics? The suspension of disbelief.
Yeah, I mean, that and with the movies.
With movies, right.
And I think that's primarily why science has gone down the route of the localized flood theories, because I think, first of all, there's this total catastrophe on the Earth sort of causes a lot of problems just fundamentally for scientists,
right?
In terms of, like I said, trying to say things about the past. And so I think they prefer the localized flood theories because they can deal with them sort of boxed in individually and not have to
it's compartmentalized,
completely affect the entire history of the world.
Right.
And, just from the outset, it does seem a little bit out of the box to say that the entire world was covered by water. But I think as we get into this in the episodes, I think we've got at least one decent theory about how that it could have happened that actually has some scientific stuff behind it. But we do want to talk about actual evidences for the global flood.
Yeah, why don't we get into those?
One that I'm not sure a lot of people are aware of, unless they're in this space, is the fact that there have been marine fossils found on the tops of mountains in every continent.
Yes.
Or every inhabited continent on the world. That's what do I have? Let's see. Mount Everest has them, which is in Asia.
Well, I mean, that's the Himalayas.
Yeah,
you have the Himalayas. You have the Andes.
You have the Andes mountains that have them. You have the Alps in Europe
the
that
Rockies,
have them.
The Rockies.
You have the Rockies and the Tibetan Plateau, which is close to, which is in the Himalayas, right next.
Yeah, it's right next.
They all have these, and this is a picture of submarine fossils here. But they all have these fossils, and it's very hard to
explain it away.
Explain how these fossils ended up on the tops of mountains, especially mountains as high as like Everest or the Rocky Mountains. I mean, these are pretty tall mountains.
Yeah, who would want to carry seashells up to the top of the mountains?
Yeah,
and I've actually heard somebody explain it that way too.
You're kidding me.
I wish I was.
Okay.
But there are some skeptics out there that say, yeah, people carry them up there.
And I think there's been some scientific, I don't really follow a lot of the reasons why they would say that these are up there, because to me it seems rather obvious that there was water over the top of the mountains at one time.
At one time, yeah.
So either the mountains weren't where they were, or water covered the mountains, or
and the mountains could have
combination of the
been
both.
smaller.
Well,
well.
that's something else we'll get into.
Yeah.
But that's one thing that we can look to. The other is this layered strata.
Right.
And right here, you'll see a picture of the Grand Canyon, and
Yeah.
you can see the layers in the Grand Canyon. You see the different rock colored layers. And what these are different types of sediment that have have fallen out of solution, or at least from a flood theory would be considered falling out of solution. I think modern geological theory would say that these were deposited over millions and millions of years. But the stratification that happens is really only something that can happen in the presence of water. We see this all the time with like riverbeds where you have sediment that flows down in through turbulent water, and it will actually layer the sediment based off of the different densities of the sediment.
And fascinatingly enough, some of you may know the eruption of Mount St. Helens in 1980, and they're seeing that happen much faster than they would have anticipated that actually happened there because of just the complete destruction and how the water flows there now, and how that sedimentary settlement happened so much faster than they thought it could happen.
So this is one of those things that really, for me, kind of puzzles me from a old Earth perspective, is because the amount of erosion that would happen over time, that over the time period that these layers were supposed to be laid down, would make it a mess. There wouldn't be clear defined layers. I'm not even entirely sure you would have clearly defined rock types. And then one of the more interesting thing about this is the layers repeat themselves all over the world. So the globe has pretty much the same layers. Some places they're thicker, some places they're thinner, but they have pretty much, and they repeat as well. So there's 6 rocks, and then they'll repeat on top of them. There'll be 6 different types of rocks. And then, so there's some sort of layering effect. And I think the best way to explain this is through water. That water was able to filter these, because we know that in water, it can pick up sediments and then filter it out by density and shape. So I think that's really a really good example of something that kind of testifies to what we would consider, at least a very, very large flood, if not a global flood.
Right. Just because of the uniformity around the world.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, that's interesting. The third one that I'm going to show you is actually the most problematic for modern science, I think, because it has to do with the strata, but it's something called a polystrate fossil. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of different polystrate fossils. I'm not sure where this one comes from, but there is, it may be come from Joggins, Nova Scotia.
Yeah. And I don't know if
there is a large,
this is basically a fossil right here.
So that's a fossilized tree trunk.
Yeah.
And it goes through multiple different stratified layers. And you can't really see them really well here. There's some definition. Well, I can't. I'm looking at a different screen.
Yeah.
But the point being is the layers that it's passing through supposedly were deposited over millions of years.
Right.
So how is a tree standing vertically through these layers fossilized?
Exactly.
Like I said, there's a major, and I don't know if this is from that one, but in Joggins, Nova Scotia, there's a whole forest of trees that are like this. And there's also, oddly enough, I think it's in California, Lompoc, California, they found a whale fossil that went through multiple stratifications.
Just as a question, fossilization itself requires pressure and water, if I'm not mistaken. Correct?
Well, mostly pressure. Water would be, it needs rapid burial and pressure.
Yeah.
Water is the most easy way to do that. You could do the same thing in an avalanche, like a major avalanche, if it were to put enough rock on top of it, enough soil on top of it to compress it. But yeah, I mean, you're talking about a lot of force because what you actually are getting is mineralization of the organic material. So it basically, the minerals seep in and the carbon
without
flows out.
without rotting.
Yeah, without rotting. And then what you're left with is basically rock, but in the form of
the tree.
of whatever it is.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's different than like, so that's where we get in, and we'll talk about the mammoths in a minute, but we're not there yet. But that's the difference between the mammoths and regular fossils is like dinosaur fossils, they are fossilized bone. They're not actually, the things we aren't digging up are not bone. They're mineralized where the minerals have invaded.
Right.
Whereas a mammoth, we're actually finding
full mammoths.
Full mammoths. We'll get into that in a minute. Another big one is the coal and oil deposits that are found on every continent on the face of the earth. And I know we've talked before, and you have some different, maybe some different ideas about where those come from.
Yeah.
But the standard,
not coal, just oil.
Well, the standard idea from science is that it's compressed vegetation and in some cases compressed animal life, although vegetation would be far more numerous. So a lot of scientists would probably default to the idea that it's mostly vegetation. Of course, when you talk about a global flood, the catastrophe that would have happened on a world that had an enormous amount of vegetation, it's something I think that's consistent. Mm-hmm. And the fact that it's on every continent on the face of the earth, including Antarctica, I believe.
Yep, they found coal in Antarctica.
Is a testament to the fact that this event happened. Whatever created that happened all over the world, not just on one or two.
Well, and I think it's also saying, the coal seams they're not like spread all over the place. When you find them, it's everything compressed.
Yeah,
which leads to the evidence that there was pressure.
Yeah,
and that everything was gathered. And how do you gather things but with water or some other type of event that would gather everything into an area that could be compressed?
Now, here's one that I didn't really realize until I started kind of going back through it. But do you know that there are huge submarine canyons that extend off the continental shelves of all the major continents?
I did know that. Yes.
So basically, what you can think of it is sort of water runoff, where massive amounts of water have run off the continental shelf into the ocean basins and carved out these massive canyons.
And there's actually underwater waterfalls now that you can even find.
And so it would seem to suggest that there was a major water runoff of the continental shelves at some point. Like I said, I had not really looked at that until I started kind of like digging up through some old stuff that I had on this. And I thought that was really interesting. Canyons, the Grand Canyon. So you just saw a picture of it a few minutes ago. It's always puzzled, I think, scientists how the Grand Canyon came to be. The prevailing theory is that the Colorado River cut it.
Over millions
now,
and millions.
There's some, from a scientific perspective, there's some problems with that because rivers typically don't cut down, they cut out. So if you know anything about how sediment works on a slope, there's an angle at which the sediment no longer will fall down and it goes out. So what happens is when you have rushing water, it will cut down to a point and loosen and this has actually happened in my dad's yard where we have a creek. It'll cut down to a point and then it'll begin to undercut the banks, and the banks will fall down.
Yeah.
And so what you will end up doing is you will not cut down you will cut out into the bank. And so the river begins to spread out rather than cutting down through the canyon.
It doesn't necessarily go through rock. That's the crazy thing. It gets all the soil.
And when you look at it, and this is something we'll talk about in, one or two episodes, when you look at the Grand Canyon, what it looks more like is that that you had soft soil, probably laid down due to a flood, and maybe what we consider a trapped lake. And then somehow it broke its banks and rushed down. And just like water rushing through a broken dam, it began to pull and cut sediment out very quickly.
Yep. And
basically, so in other words, the Colorado River isn't the cause of the canyon. It's actually the result of the canyon.
Correct.
So and that's not that would be certainly go against, I think, what modern scientists would say, but it just doesn't make sense that a river can cut that far down into a canyon, especially through solid rock. That we're not talking about bank soil, or we're talking about actual rock.
Yeah.
Kind of different.
Exactly.
Frozen mammoths. What do you know about frozen mammoths?
They're woolly.
They're woolly.
No, it's
picture
there's
of one
the, yeah,
right
we
there.
have one behind us here. It's absolutely fascinating to me, and we found several of these mammoths, and they still have organic matter.
Some of them have been found with food, undigested food in their stomach.
And of course, I don't know how many of you have seen the movie The Day After Tomorrow.
Yeah,
which of course they kind of, the science in it is not great, but it's actually a really fun movie to watch. But the interesting thing is they say, it pulls super cooled air down from the troposphere or whatever the name of it, and that's what freezes everything really quick. Yeah. Which that's how it had to happen. Things had to freeze very, very quickly. But how did it freeze very, very quickly? And again, some of the theories that we're going to discuss, there's only a couple that could even explain how this could even happen and even preserve organic material.
The funniest thing I find about mammoths is this idea that they lived in the cold.
Right.
Because when you think about the amount of food it takes to sustain a modern elephant,
right?
Like they eat several
tons.
Is it tons a day? I know it's several 100 pounds of vegetation a day just to maintain their weight.
Yeah.
So
I don't think it's
something
tons,
this big. And also you'll notice the fur, the quote unquote fur, it's not actually fur, it's hair.
Yeah.
And hair does not have the same thermal properties as fur. Hair, and we know that, just because full head of hair keeps you a little warm, but not the way that my husky stays warm in the cold. Not really made for. It's probably designed more to protect them from sun. If we want to call it design, kind of like what our hair does to us. Than actual for the cold. So the fact that they are found in a cold environment or found in ice doesn't really necessarily mean that they lived there. And I don't think their body physiology really is conducive to that. Just by the sheer amount of calories that they have to take in, they're not going to be able to find that in a cold environment. And they would have to be a
fatty animal if they were in a cold environment. And there's no fat on these things.
So that's another thing that I thought was kind of interesting. And we'll talk more about this later because I think there's a flood theory that will explain how we ended up with these guys. And then the last one we're going to kind of go through, which I think we're hitting pretty good time right now.
Yep, we're doing good.
There's something called the Mid-Oceanic Ridge. And if you don't know what this is, it's a ridge that runs through, it's the red part.
This one right here.
Yeah. It actually goes all over. It kind of wraps around the earth, sort of like a seam of a baseball, and actually intersects with itself there, right in between.
We call it the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, but it's really a earthly ridge.
Well, it's all around.
Yeah.
It's most well defined kind of in the Atlantic.
Yeah.
But it does, you can see it kind of curves off and goes into the, what would that be? The Indian Ocean, I think.
Yeah. Indian Ocean on the other side of Africa there.
And the strange thing about this is it's a mountain range that's up underneath the ocean, and it runs pretty much circumnavigates the globe, including running up underneath. If you can see, it runs up underneath the west coast of the United States.
Yeah.
And probably up underneath part of the
the
Arabian
Ring of
Peninsula.
It also, if I'm not mistaken,
well, it is part of the. There's part of it
fire.
that's part of the Ring of Fire.
Yeah.
Or
it's over your head.
Yeah.
It's above Nick's head. That's the part.
But the strange thing about this is it's not a. So typically, when you think of a mountain, you're going to think of a compression.
Yeah.
So you have two compressions, and I'm just do this for, and you create a mountain this way. That's not how these mountains seem to be created. They're actually tension fractures. So this is a compression fracture where a rock is compressed and it fractures and piles up. A tension fracture is more like pulling apart, and I don't know if I can do that. So that's what a compression fracture is. But what it's actually doing is it's compressing up as if something were trying to push through the bottom of it.
Yeah.
And so there's actually tension fractures in two directions. So there's tension. So here's the main ridge that goes down through America and the Americas. And so there's fractures that are this way, the main fracture down the center of the mountain range, And then there's intermittent fractures in this direction. So it looks like a hatching, like cross hatching. So there's a main fracture down, and then it looks like the seam of a baseball.
Yep.
Where you have a fracture down the center, and then these little micro fractures, and they're all tension fractures. And so the main scientific explanation for this is what we call seafloor spreading, which is supposedly a result of the plate tectonic process. But there's problems if you go down where it intersects below Africa. You have seafloor spreading happening in 4 different directions.
Yeah. So
which doesn't make sense.
No. If you have plates, that means two of them.
So I think there's probably a better explanation, which we'll get to on a future episode. Not a future episode, one of the future next couple of episodes. That I think forms the basis for a really good hypothesis on how the flood may have actually happened. But this is a strange one because these are not small mountains by any stretch of the mountain.
No.
And they're not like the mountains on the surface.
And that's, of course, that's usually some of the deepest parts of the ocean is where this ridge is. So they are very tall.
We're running out of time on this episode, so let's go ahead and answer our question.
Which our question was, there was a catastrophic evidence. There is evidence for a catastrophic worldwide flood. And of course, on our truth scale, 5 or 1, I guess I should say, because it's 1 to 5, 5 being preposterous. 1 would be an absolute truth.
Yeah. We may be reversed there, but I don't know if it was a 1 or a 5.
Oh,
but absolute truth is
5. So 1 is preposterous. 5 is
I think that was
absolute truth. Yes. Okay.
I don't even know if we have numbers.
I don't know if we did either. But now we have numbers. So where do you
fall on it?
There's a book called Evidence That Demands a Verdict. Mm-hmm. There is too much evidence that points to some worldwide flood.
Yeah.
I've just seen too many things.
You have literary evidence. You have historical evidence.
Yeah. There's just too many things in my life
evidence
that I can't ignore.
Yeah.
There was a worldwide flood.
Yeah.
And I believe it with all my heart that there was a worldwide flood. So I say it's completely proven.
I think that the evidence base, I mean, obviously I have religious convictions, but I think the evidence from history, from culture, from science, I think it all intersects in the idea that there was a worldwide flood somewhere in our history.
Exactly. And I think we're gonna.
So I think it's proven.
Well, of course,
for those that are willing to actually look at the evidence, I think
our statement is there is evidence. That's the statement. There is evidence. Yeah. It's proven. There's evidence, and that's kind of what I boil down to. I'm not even looking at it from a biblical standpoint. I'm just looking at the evidence as it is.
So next episode, what we're going to do is we're actually going to dive into some of the theories for the flood, and we're actually going to pull out one particular theory that I think has a lot of scientific weight to it, but has been largely ignored by the scientific and the religious community. And I'll outline those reasons why. But so we'll be spending the next couple episodes doing that.
There's a lot of information we're going to go through. So we're just going to wrap this one up. And again, I'm Trevor. This is Nick. Make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and all of our Agape TV brothers and sisters that have their own podcasts, make sure you check them out too. So as we end all of our episodes, keep seeking the truth, because the truth will set you free. We'll see you next time.